Welcome to this talk on the important topic of mental health as part of our well-being. My name is Henning Bune, Head of the Marketing and Communication Department in Skuld. During more than a year of the global pandemic, it has become evident that good health and well-being must have the highest priority, both for seafarers and for the employees in our industry. With me today, I have Chief HR Officer Trude Husebø and Chief Claims Officer Mattias Hedqvist. Trude Husebø has been part of Skulds' executive management team for 13 years, in charge of human resources, communication and sustainability. Mattias has been in Skuld since 2002, held various claims positions, including also stationed in our office in Greece for more than 4 years, before joining the executive management team in 2016. Welcome to you both. I will start with Mattias. What are your thoughts on today's situation for the seafarers?
To understand really the situation for the seafarers, you would have to ask each individual seafarers how they are doing. And that's quite difficult. But today we have two really good and comprehensive surveys which have been done quite recently. One by Mission to Seafarers and their happiness index, and the other one is Marine Benefits. They call the survey Refresh. I think both those surveys actually confirm that seafarers are resilient. They have been coping okay with the situation under the circumstances. But there are of course exceptions, and we see that in Skuld, and we also see that from these two reports. And in particular those seafarers who have been on board for a long time and beyond the expiry of the contract, which is maximum 12 months. So there are seafarers who've been on board for 14, 16, even 18 months. And they haven't been coping very well for obvious reasons. And there is where we see the anxiety and the more severe depression. And also among the younger seafarers. So I think when it comes to the more seasoned seafarers, those who have been out many years and have been sort of in rough seas before, they are coping quite well. But it's the younger seafarers.
Trude, why is focusing on mental health so important today?
Well, of course we have experienced during the pandemic, also for shore people, that we have been sitting in isolation. So we have been feeling much more stress than we normally do. And this has in a way accentuated the issues around mental health. And but definitely before the pandemic, this was also a problem that we saw was rising amongst young people again. Anxiety, depression and fatigue was some problems that we could see was, in many ways accelerating in especially the Western world. So I think mental health is absolutely on the agenda today and should be, and we need to understand and know more about it.
What can we in business do here to support and assist on the business side?
On the business side, we can definitely do a lot. And first and foremost, it's about building up a safe environment, to have a trust-based culture, to have good leaders, but also, of course, to learn people how to cope with mental health issues. So talking about these things, putting it on the agenda and building up a good and resilient working environment is important.
I think that is what we have seen now quite a lot, at least in the call it the end of the pandemic. Hopefully it will end soon. And I've spoken with a few of our ship owners, and they actually put a lot of attention to that. And internet connectivity in general have really assisted there as well. Before they had sent faxes or emails or telephones, but now it's actually team meetings with the people on board and the shore personnel. And that gives another type of connection between the two. On the ship they see that actually the people ashore, they are trying to do whatever they can to send these seafarers back home. And on the shore side, they actually see that these seafarers who have been on board for so long they are suffering, and if they are suffering, I think there is a greater incentive among the people ashore to actually do something about it.
Mm. You mentioned younger people. You saw some worrying trends there. Do you see the same thing in the organizations, Trude?
Yes, we do. I think that during the pandemic, we see that the more senior people who have been working for a long time, they are coping quite well. It's the young people, the newcomers to the organization, that struggle. And I think that the most important thing for us now in shipping is to put a focus on how to make sure that they are integrated well in the organization. Of course, it's important to communicate and keep in touch and in contact, but I think that we have to allow them to come to the office and prioritize those guys when it comes to who can be in the office first.
And Mattias, for the seafarers, how would you say the importance of health and well-being when it comes to the human element of being at sea?
I think it's important from different perspectives. And going back to the pure humanity perspective, we want to help people who we see suffering. It's in our nature to do that. But also, I think it's an important business case to invest a little bit in the seafarers' mental health and well-being. We have over the past decades talked about human errors, and I've seen figures between 75 and 95% of all cases which are caused by human error. I think it's difficult to measure. And as a response to that, we have had a lot of focus on building competence, training, physical health. But I think what is now changing a little bit, and what we are adding on top of all that, training is important, what we are adding on top of all that is mental well-being. So you can have a perfectly trained crew on board, but if they are tired, if they are demotivated, if they feel that the employer are not doing whatever the employer can to improve the situation on board, then that crew member will not use the competence for the benefit of the shipping company.
How do you see the role of HR here, Trude, evolve?
I think that the role of HR more important than ever, and like Mattias is pointing to, the connection between people's well-being and the performance of the organization is very clear. We have known that for many years, but maybe it's more accentuated these days. So I think HR's role here is to really support a good, safe culture, building up good leaders, and making sure, specifically in these times now, that we have a special focus on the young people, integrating them. And you know, shipping is a social business. It has always been that. And therefore, maybe it's even more stressful for us trying to keep up, you know, the atmosphere and the spirit in shipping. And I'm a little bit afraid that we might lose some of the young people these days, because what has been the fantastic thing about shipping is, you know, being together and with a very international environment, etc. So let's all come together now, and not only HR, but everyone, making sure that we keep the talents that we have recruited lately.
Do you agree to this, Mattias, when you look at the life at sea and the priorities? What sort of actions do the industry take?
It depends on what type of problem you want to solve, because there are, I mean, the recent problems are on crew change and vaccine. That is a little bit outside the control of the individual shipping company or the individual insurer like Skuld. It's very much up to the individual countries to make sure that they designate seafarers as essential workers. UN, with their agencies, in particular IMO, they have, I think, adopted 3 or 4 resolutions now, urging these countries to designate seafarers as essential workers, and still it's only 50 of 150 countries that have done it. And some of those countries have now recently, when we saw the upsurge in infection rates in India, for instance, said that they are not going to let Indian seafarers come ashore. So it really depends on what type of problem we are trying to solve. But there is, I think I would say that the industry and all the stakeholders in the industry have stand almost shoulder to shoulder and almost shouted to all these countries to designate seafarers. But still, it's not happening in the same pace as we want.
And if we ask the seafarers what they want, what do they say?
They would probably look closer to their environment where they are, the working environment. They will like to have internet connection to be able to speak with the people at home. Mm. They think it's important to have time to rest. For obvious reasons, they want to sleep when they're tired. It's a natural thing. They want to have good food, a comfortable bed. They want to have time to go ashore, which we know it's impossible now, and it might be difficult also in the future. So it's those kind of things. And what is there important, also from hearing the ship owners I've spoken to, is that they want to have a level playing field. They want to have other companies complying with the MLC to give the seafarers the basic right, not to save money by giving cheaper food or saving on internet connection and those kind of things, which is something they have the right to receive under the MLC as a seafarer. Mm.
Trude?
I'd like to add here that what is positive then is to see how much sustainability is gaining attention these days, and under that umbrella we have the ESG, environmental, social and governing risks that we are looking at. And these days investors and regulators, they are actually now focusing more on the social, the S in ESG, which I think is really good. Human rights, well-being, these things are definitely on the agenda, and investors are not wanting to invest in companies that are not paying attention to this. And regulators, they are absolutely now putting much more attention also into this. So it's definitely a change, a game changer, I would say, when it comes to the people's acknowledging how important it is for mental health and well-being for people.
What is Skuld doing to prevent human illness on the loss prevention side, Mattias?
We have invested quite heavily in our loss prevention department the past few years. We now work very closely with the shipping companies. We give advice on almost a daily basis on these kind of things. But it's difficult to just list all the initiatives we take. But just to give you a couple, we are now, after the pandemic, which I hope will be ending soon, going to have what we call Skulds School for Seafarers, where we invite seafarers to a 2 or 3 day seminar, where also mental health and well-being, resilience will be on the agenda.
Important. Yeah. Trude, how do we cope with the pandemic internally in Skuld?
Well, we have put a lot of attention on communication. I think the relationship between people is one of the key things here. And we have seen that leaders have really put up a great effort in talking to their employees. That has been important. We also see that people did really good in the beginning of the pandemic, and now they're getting more tired. So we have to put even more attention to this. But I think that overall communication and the focus on well-being is the key thing that we have done during this situation.
Will there be any changes to the work life after this pandemic?
Absolutely. I definitely think there will be big changes, but there are very individual needs. What we have said is that people can come to the office, or should be in the office 3 days a week, to make sure that we have good cultural training, etc. But they can also work from home 2 days a week. That makes sure that people can take care of work-life balance in a better way than we did before. So something good comes out of every crisis, if you want to see it.
Any final comments, Mattias?
Well, that will not be an opportunity for the seafarers. They will have to be on board 7 days a week. But I think there will be some changes there as well, perhaps not as apparent on the shore-based companies. But I think, internet connection will improve the communication ship shore. And I think that will have many positive side effects going forward.
Thank you to both of you for sharing your reflections on this important topic. From what I hear, I think we all have reasons, good reasons for being optimistic for the future. The shipping industry has always adjusted to major challenges, and if anything, this pandemic has pushed us forward in openness and acceptance of mental health as an integral part of people's well-being. And that the ocean industries are addressing these issues. This will be vital learning when we take on the next challenge of returning safely back to more normal work and social life. Stay safe and take care.